Our first viewer says, I am so angry about the selfish, thoughtless ways my husband treats me. I try to be loving toward him, but he keeps doing the same things. Same stupid things, sorry. How do I get over this? Well, you could always wait till he's asleep, zip tie his hands together and put a plastic bag over his head, then he'd quit doing thoughtless things. And although obviously I'm joking, you know, there's some truth in what I'm saying. I mean, we really want to change people. We want them to be different. We want them to suffer for not loving us the way that we want. And we don't get to. You've already provided the keys, really, to what to do and what you said about him. You said he's selfish and he keeps repeating the same stupid things. Well, there are two ways you could see this. You could assume that he knows how to be loving, but he intentionally withholds his love from you, just to hurt you and to entertain himself. Possible, I suppose. I've run into almost nobody who would fall into that description. Or second, he's what you said, stupid. He doesn't know any better. I mean, it's not complicated. Who does stupid things? Stupid people. So when it comes to relationships, when it comes to loving and caring, he really is stupid. And if you believed that rather than resenting it, quite different, just believed it and accepted it, well then you'd feel compassion for him. You'd do whatever it took to, help him learn this. You're thinking that he knows better. Nah, just because he's heard better. Just hearing a thing doesn't make us capable of doing it. I hear this all the time. Well, I knew better, or my partner knew better. Well, yeah, sure. Your partner may have heard the ideal spoken on more than one occasion, but so what? That doesn't confer ability any more than if I were to tell you, you'd be happier if you'd be perfectly loving. All right, now you know better. Does that confer upon you the ability to be perfectly loving? Not at all. So same would be true with him. So now instead of being angry at him, you'd want to help him. You wouldn't hang on to grievances. So if there are things he doesn't know how to do, tell him. If there are foolish, ignorant, inconsiderate things he does, tell him about those. Calmly, tell him the things you want. Tell him the things you don't want. But there's no way he can hear you if you have the attitude of, I'm so angry that. Nobody can listen. Nobody can learn under those conditions. And I think we're going to get to an example here from another questioner as to one way that you can communicate what you want from your husband. Here's a viewer who says, a close friend of mine is currently separated from her husband. I can see what's going on with them, but I struggle to know best how to love and support her. I've told her about Real Love, gave her a copy of the audiobook of Real Love and Marriage that she hasn't listened to. I think she's afraid to. I don't want to push anything down her throat, so mostly I'm just listening to her. But I feel the urge to know what to say to her, which I know is a trap, and I don't want to perpetuate the victim that she's feeling like. So, essentially, what do I do? We're so afraid of hurting people's feelings. We're afraid of saying something to them that they won't like. Well, think about it. If somebody is stuck absolutely in the same pattern of behavior for a lifetime, there's only one way they're going to get out of that. They're not going to see it on their own. Somebody's going to have to say, you realize that you're stuck in the mud, and if you'd like, there's a way that you can get to the side so you're not stuck in the mud. Well, after people have been doing things, they've actually done studies about this. If we do a thing enough times, we become invested in that thing. And we then have a tendency to rationalize what we're doing by saying that it's right. Crazy, huh? So our attitudes lead to behavior, true. I think we can pretty much all intuitively get that. But it's also true that our behavior leads to attitudes. So if I do a thing over and over and you come and you ask me about it, I'm going to say, oh, I believe strongly in it. Sure, just so that there's some harmony in my life. How could I keep doing a thing I don't believe in? So if this friend of yours has been stuck in the mud, there's a big part of her invested in being stuck in the mud. And so in order for you to show her a way out, you're going to have to tell her something she doesn't already believe. And to some degree, she's going to resist that because she's going to want to defend what she does. The bottom line of what I'm saying is, if you really want to help somebody, you have to be willing to hurt their feelings. You have to be willing to just royally irritate them. Now, I don't mean do that on purpose. You don't poke at people till they're mad. But if you're not willing to do that, you cannot help them. And if you won't do that, well, it's cowardice, isn't it? I mean, it's not like you're trying to get her to buy a certain kind of car that you like. It's not like you're trying to get her to loan you money. You're trying to help her pretty much save the rest of her life. So my question to you is, are you willing to do what it takes? And that might just annoy her a lot. And if she does get annoyed when you point out something that she could change, that doesn't mean it's your fault either. Like I said, it is inevitable that as people are on exactly the same course, if we want to help them, they're not going to like the first few steps. They're too difficult. So, like you said, she's got the audiobook and, she's avoiding it. I would put it right to her. I mean, right in her face. Say, honey, the way you're living sucks. It's awful. I can see it. I can see that you're miserable individually. I can see that with your husband. You're just having a terrible marriage. If you keep doing what you're doing, it will stay terrible. If you're interested, I'll describe to you a way or several ways that you could get out of this mud hole. But it's going to be tough. It won't necessarily be fun and easy. In fact, if it were, she'd already be doing it. And you need to remember that every minute that you listen to her and you don't say something, she takes that as confirmation that what she's doing is okay. It reconfirms her victimhood. It reconfirms the lies that she's telling about herself and her marriage. So when we don't say anything to people who are headed down the wrong path, it's not like we're just neutral. We're actually aiding and abetting. We are aiding in a crime, in the commission of a crime. So I suggest that we have more courage when we talk to people and demonstrate more willingness to help them. Here's a viewer who says, I think I'm seeing a new area of my marriage where I've been a complete and total victim. And I'd like your perspective. My husband and I have been married for almost 6 years. We got married at the young age of 22, and I can see clearly how it was all about imitation love. Trading, which reveals, of course, why we have had the issues that we have. Honey, you keep being honest like that, and you can learn anything. Right off, you're admitting that, we got married based on the imitation love that we were trading, and so now we're having problems. Good for you. You continue. Thank God things have gotten tremendously better thanks to the real love principles. My husband hasn't read or studied any of the materials yet. Now, for the rest of you, notice what she just said. It's actually pretty important. She just said things are a lot better with the real love principles, and yet her husband hasn't read a thing. It doesn't matter if both people are doing real love. It matters if one person is willing to do it and take the lead, set the example, eliminate the anger and attacking and criticism and lack of acceptance, at least on that one person's part, and it can make a huge difference just if one person does it. So, back to my question. I grew up in a very strong Christian household. My husband did not, although from time to time, from the time we first met, he fully professed faith and said that he'd been attending church for years. During our engagement, I had reservations about whether or not he'd be able to be the spiritual leader of our family that I believed we needed. So I shared these reservations, and he promised that if I gave him the chance to learn and grow, he would be that leader. I chose to believe and marry him, even though I wasn't completely positive that he would do that. In other words, I ignored my natural instincts because the imitation love exchange was so fantastic. Oh, honey, you have such nice insights. We get married for all the boxes that you would check off on a survey or an assessment on Match.com. where essentially it's an assessment of how we give and how we receive imitation love. That's pretty much all the information that you give on your survey or your profile on online dating sites. And we ignore the important things, the things that are going to make all the difference to a relationship. Honesty, willingness to love unconditionally, in your case, a relationship with God. These are the important things, and you ignored those. And now you're paying the price, in your own words. Since that time, my husband has claimed that he's disillusioned with the whole Christian thing. Doesn't read the Bible, doesn't pray with me, doesn't really express any faith. Says he believes in God, just not really sure about Jesus. I've held resentments about this for years due to the fact that he knew from the beginning how important this was to me, and even made and renewed his promise in our second year of marriage. I know my resentment is not very loving or Christian. Still, very honest on your part. And you illustrate why I suggest to everybody out there that you decide before you get married, and frankly, before you decide to live with somebody, what is a deal breaker? What are the important things? If you're not in full agreement on that, and you haven't really assessed where somebody's going, like let's say that dancing is really important to you, to pick a thing, and your partner says, well, I don't dance, but if we get married, I will learn to. No, you better not. Because it's very unlikely that it's going to happen. If your partner was already interested in dancing, it's not like it's an unavailable thing. They would be. You say music's very important to you, and your partner says, well, I'm not really interested in music, but I will be if we get married. Same thing is true with the things that we mentioned. Religion, things like, are we going to have children, for example? Oh, I hear that all the time. Well, he's kind of wishy-washy on children, but I know that after we get married and I talk to him about how important it is to me, then he'll suddenly care. No, not a good choice. And you're recognizing that in your own life. We discussed it a year ago, and I was angry, and he said, you make stupid promises that you don't really know what you're getting into when you're young. I know beyond a shadow of doubt that my resentment is wrong, and I'm wondering if you could provide some perspective and guidance about, all of this. So let's look at the elements. Did he promise to you that he would be the Christian spiritual leader in your home? Yes, he did, like openly, clearly. And then he renewed that promise, like you said, in the second year of your marriage. Did he break that promise? Yes, he did. Now, why did he break the promise? Because this really matters. Did he do it to be mean? Did he intentionally set out on a path to go away from the spiritual path that you're on? No. What he's done is he professed to you, probably almost certainly, a greater belief in Christianity and spirituality than he really had. But, that's kind of what we do. Like you said, you two got together because you were trading imitation love. He heard that spirituality, Christianity were very important to you. And so when you said, it's really very, very important to me, what do you think of Christianity? Honey, what did you think he was going to say? I mean, if you'd said, it's very, very important to me that we keep an iguana after we get married, what do you think? He would have said, oh man, love iguanas. They're all over my house. I mean, it's what we do when we're dating, which regrettably is just horrifying. We often don't even realize we're telling these lies. In fact, as he was looking into your eyes and touching you, he probably even thought, yes, in this moment, it really is important to me. No kidding. We buy our own lies usually before we tell them to other people. So, yeah, he did lie to you. And mostly he didn't realize he was doing it. Maybe he did somewhat, but, so what? Do we really care? Because now it's, what are we going to do next? You could wait till he's asleep and tie him up and beat him with a bat, but you wouldn't feel better. So my first suggestion is you got to accept him. He's your partner. You're married to him. And I would suggest you actually tell him this. You say, you know, sweetie, I've been pushing you to do this. Big mistake. I want you to know that I'm going to completely accept you, whatever path you take when it comes to spirituality, religion, whatever. That'll be very disarming. He'll be very tickled to hear that. Now, there's a big part of you at this moment thinking, but if I tell him I'll accept you no matter what, then he won't do what I want. Wow, are we ever cracked up about this? The whole idea of being in a partnership isn't to get your partner to do what you want anyway. It's to love them. And then as you love him, he's going to figure out what the best thing to do is. Almost everybody that I talk to who has, I'm trying to think if there are any exceptions. Pretty much everybody that I've talked to who has a negative opinion about God, religion, whatever, it's because of the people who taught it to them. It's because people did shove it down their throat, told them what they ought to do, were disappointed and irritated when they didn't follow a particular path that had been prescribed to them. And so they end up fighting and resisting the thing that they're being taught because of the people who are delivering it poorly, when it may end up that it's actually what they'd like to do. Well, how would they know? They're too busy fighting, kind of like a 4-year-old, fighting you when you tell them to do something in the wrong tone of voice. So what can you do? First, you accept him. Second, be loving. Here you're talking about Christianity and God, and you ain't living it. So if you actually want to interest somebody in whatever religion you believe in, or in God as you see God, well, be an example of that. Be loving, be Christian. And then there's the possibility that he might actually be interested in following you because he sees that it makes a positive difference in your life. But be careful that you don't do this so that he will follow you. I mean, if your attempt is to be a good Christian so that he'll want to be, well, it's just another clever manipulation, except that now, instead of doing it by force, trying to push it down his throat, now you're doing it by tricking him. That's not going to work either. And tell him what you're doing. Tell him that, for example, Christianity is important to you. So say to him, I'm not going to push you. I'm not going to nag you. I'm not going to make you feel bad anymore. It is an important part of my life, like reading the Bible, for example, since you brought it up. Would you be willing to, from time to time, as I find things in the Bible that I think are interesting, would you be willing to just listen to me as I teach you what I know? Notice how utterly devoid of expectations I am as I say that. The tone and delivery are everything. You might try another approach. I'm just giving you thoughts that you can piddle around with. But, most people who become disenchanted, as I said, it's because they're just reacting to somebody trying to control them. Do you know somebody who is spiritually mature, who has a firm understanding of the same principles you do? In this case, God, Christianity, the Bible, and who would be willing to talk with your husband, but just to kind of walk beside him as he gains his own spiritual legs, rather than trying to convince him to do something. If you do, you might ask that person if they'd be willing to talk to him, and him if he's willing to talk to them. So these are just some thoughts. But boy, a big part of this, honey, is you really loving your husband, no matter what he does. This viewer says, at our Real Love group, the term strategic running has been used and promoted by several members as the, I love how this is capitalized, the word of Greg. It's hysterical. I get a kick out of it when I'm quoted, because it's rarely what I actually said. You continue. It's used in connection with the strategic running that we do when we're faced like with an angry, abusive spouse or other people. I've never heard you use that term. Can you address it? So I'm sorely tempted to say this is the word of Greg. When we become afraid, we protect ourselves. And we all know the 4 general ways we do that. We lie, we attack, we act like victims, we run. Notice that those are the things that we do when we're reacting to fear. And the reaction is usually involuntary. People become afraid, poof, they respond before they even realize what they're doing. But what if I'm faced with a situation where somebody is being critical, angry, threatening, demeaning, whatever, unloving, to the point that I realize that, I don't think I can cope with this much longer. I don't think I am loving enough to remain in this environment, because we all have limits to our love. We all do. You push somebody hard enough and you'll find out what theirs is. So here I am in a situation and I'm going, if I stay here, I'm going to get depleted and I'm going to start responding with protecting behaviors in whatever variety I choose. And then, of course, it all goes straight down to the toilet because I protect myself, which communicates I don't love you, and then the other person feels threatened and they respond with even more attacking, and we've all seen that happen hundreds of times. So the first choice would obviously be that I would be unconditionally loving toward that person. But as I said, I've already identified that I'm running out. My bucket is emptying, and the first choice is rapidly becoming unavailable. So, second choice, I could stay in the interaction, knowing that I'm going to run out of love, knowing that I'm going to become afraid, and I'm going to start protecting myself. Well, that would be just stupid. And yet, we do that all the time. I mean, people do it every day. They're in a situation that's unpleasant. Somebody is, being critical of them. And rather than excuse themselves, they stay there, knowing they haven't got what it takes, knowing they're going to run out, and then everything goes to hell. Well, it shouldn't be a surprise, should it? So how about a third choice? How about I just leave? I decide, I'm running out, I'm going to be empty. Why would I stay in a situation that I'm going to make worse if I do completely empty out? And so I will simply withdraw. That is strategic withdrawal. There's no such thing as strategic running, because running is a protecting behavior. But if I can make a conscious decision before I run out and before I become afraid, nah, this wouldn't be good to stay in this situation, I'm withdrawing. Strategic withdrawal is different from running in these 2 ways. It's not a response to fear. It's made consciously and deliberately. That's the difference. Whereas in running, I am afraid, and it's just almost always involuntary. So quite a big difference. I'm a really energetic advocate for strategic withdrawal. Don't stay where you can't handle it. In fact, don't even go into a situation where you know that you're not going to be able to handle it. People call me all the time. They say, my mother, all she has to do is say hello to me, and I empty out and we start arguing. Well, then why are you spending time with your mother? Because I have to, they say. Really? So the police come over to your house, handcuff you, throw you in the paddy wagon, and deliver you to your mother's house. No, until you know that you're able to have a civil, loving conversation with your mother, even for a few minutes, you shouldn't have any association at all. Well, but then she'll be mad at me. You just told me that she's mad at you all the time anyway. So it couldn't be worse than that. Here's a viewer who says, sometimes, like now, I feel like I'm so far gone that I can't get to the place where I can choose a different way to live. The truth is that I'm angry and bitter about the pain that I've had in my life, And so angry and bitter, I can't even appreciate the good stuff I do have. The most important people in my life have hurt me to the core. So it's all I know. Here's another bit of truth in my feelings. I want somebody to pay. Crazy, I know, since those people have just gone on with their lives without a thought of how deeply they've hurt others, including me. I'm told that I want to stay this way. But believe me, I don't. There is plenty of stuff and people around me, but I'm so empty inside. The really scary thing is that I'm pretty sure that if I can't let go of this, I will soon be alone. I'm like a pit bull to the past. So anyway, so blah, blah, blah. You said my dad died before. Actually, I wasn't making fun. She said blah, blah, blah. I could look sort of dismissive, like blah, blah, blah. You said my dad died before I could tell him how I felt, and my mom, she doesn't have the capacity to hear a word I say. So anyway, pretty much what do I do? But you said on the outside, I can pretend pretty good, but the truth is I'm pissed. So, honey, I really get this. From the time we were born, we kind of had this innate hope that things would go well, didn't we? I mean, that's kind of obvious when you consider that we didn't have the hope that things would go badly. And then we were fed and clothed and diapered and kept warm. And for most of us, things went pretty well for a time. For some of us, that only lasted for like 6 months. But then things started to go badly. Then it turns out that the people around us didn't see us as just the little cute thing anymore. And for some people, that ran out really quickly and started having expectations, making demands, being disappointed in us, expressing their disappointment in us. And we discovered that the world was really a bitterly disappointing place. We were surrounded with people who were empty and afraid themselves. And so what did we hear all day long? I don't love you. I don't love you. I don't love you. I hate you. You've disappointed me. You're not what I hoped. That's really quite a drag. And I mean, it feels like a bitter betrayal. So pain, yeah, it's a nightmare. And you need to hear that I get that. That for actually a large number of us, the way our lives have turned out it's awful. Far cry from what we hoped when we were just little kids. When an ice cream cone was enough to make us happy. And now everybody around us disappointed us. It's pretty terrible. So what can you do? Well, honey, we're doing it right now. It's important that you pay attention to what I'm saying. I can't change your past. I can't do a dang thing about your future either. But I can tell you that I really understand how this feels. To feel disappointed, to feel disillusioned, to be angry at the people around you, to want them to hurt for all the pain they've caused you. I get it. And it's important that you know that I get it so you can feel seen. And if you can feel truly seen in this moment, however many thousand miles we're apart, you can begin to feel accepted. You can begin to understand just a little bit of what it means to be really cared about, to be loved. So now you have a choice. You can hang with this, as kids would say. You can stay with the feeling of being unconditionally accepted, or you can go back and hang on to the past. You need to do two things. First, feel the love. Second, you now can see the difference. You can feel the difference between hating and being loved. So now you go out of your way. Get a coach, talk to other people in real love, attend a real love group, travel from wherever you are to where real love groups are in person. If we really want to see our lives change, we do whatever it takes to make the change. I talked to a man one day and he was describing the bitterness and unhappiness in his life. And I said, well, attend a real love group. How far is the closest one? And he said, oh man, I can't go to a real love group. It's 45 minutes away. Really? Huh. So if you had cancer and I told you that the only chemotherapy on the planet that treated your particular form of cancer was 45 minutes away, you wouldn't go. Yeah, you would, and you'd crawl to get there. Well, this is at least that important. What good does it do to save somebody's physical life if they're unhappy? So here you are, you get a decision to make. I get the pain of it all, but every second that you devote to resenting people who didn't love you, people who never knew how, you're essentially re-inflicting the wound on yourself. It's like insisting that mutes sing. It's like insisting on speaking to deaf people. It's like trying to get pigs fly. Honey, you're asking for the impossible from people who will never give it to you. You said, my dad's gone, so I can't say these things to him, and my mom won't listen. Well, you can pretty much give up on your mom, too, forever. It's not about expressing your pain to people and having them apologize. We could line everybody up in a row and have them and force them to their knees and make them say to you that they're sorry for the pain they caused, and your life wouldn't be one bit different. Because somebody else would come along in the next 10 minutes and would also say, I don't love you to you, and now you'd have another line to create. So it's partly an intellectual understanding that all that past stuff is pretty boring, certainly harmful, and then you going out and getting the love that you need, which is going to involve you talking to people and describing to them not how you've been hurt, because that's what's been done to you, but describing how you have been selfish, how you have played the victim, how you've lied about your part in it, how you've maintained this little game that you've been playing for your entire life. Let down all pretense and all protection and let people love you for being, well, you're talking about all the people who didn't love you, and yet, frankly, honey, you're right in the same spot. You're doing what they did. You're not loving the people around you either, feeling like this. There's no way you could. So tell them the truth about you. How what you're doing is just as unloving, just as harmful as anything that was ever done to you. And then see what happens. Don't try to control them. Don't try to manipulate them. Don't try to get them to like you. Tell them the stark, naked truth and allow them to love you. Oh, that's a hoot, honey. Give it a shot. Let me know. Here's a viewer who says, I'm still reeling from a recent breakup where my ex told me that I don't know what unconditional love is and accused me of being cold-hearted. When people tell you that they're cold-hearted, what they're telling you is that you haven't given them what they want. Which doesn't mean that you are loving, but that's what they're really telling you. Almost every time somebody accuses you of something, they're just describing themselves and what they didn't get. Sorry, brief aside. You continue. I guess that was a blessing because I looked it up on the internet, unconditional love. And that's how I ended up here on your website. He's probably right that I do not know. I am certain that he didn't love me unconditionally. He expected me to act in certain ways, to forgive certain behaviors that were unacceptable to me, and so on. It was not a healthy relationship for me. And the best I can do is love him from a distance. Perfect. You actually stated the whole problem and the solution, the temporary solution, beautifully. You do not know how to unconditionally love. The odds that you would have figured out how to love unconditionally on your own are infinitesimal. Ignore them. He doesn't know how to unconditionally love. So we've got two people who are unloving and they were trying to create a relationship. Nah, you guys were doomed from, the start, from hello. So you've also identified the solution. You're not married. So why persist in this thing? Get out. Get out right now. Don't pass go. Don't collect $200. And then learn all over again. And consider the possibility that you are learning as a child. You can't believe how much faster you'll learn if you decide right from the beginning, I don't know anything. I've watched people's progress toward happiness interrupted more by I'm right than any other single thing. I was talking to a man the other day, and I was saying, so you're unhappy. Our whole reason to be here in life is to be happy. So what could you possibly know? He said. I said, you don't know anything. You don't know anything about happiness, and that's all that matters. And then as I talked to him in the next sentence or two, he said, well, now, but. I said, how can you be telling me but? You don't know anything, remember? You know nothing. Now, I don't claim to know it all either, not even like remotely, but I know a few things. So if I know a few things that consistently produce happiness and you don't, then the word but would be eliminated from your vocabulary, wouldn't it? You would try anything I suggested, not because I need you to, but because I think you could be happier. What do you got to lose? If you try it and you hate it, I mean really try it, not half-heartedly, well, you can always quit. I'm not trying to get you to nothing. But now, back to you. If you're willing to really admit you don't know anything about loving, oh, baby, this is like being born again. You get to be a wholly different person. And then, after you're really mature in real love, where you got to the place where you really know what it is, to get it from other women, for example, then maybe you can start looking for a partner, like in a year. I'm not exaggerating. People learn about real love, and then they go, oh, wow, I think I can do this. And they go out and they start dating. Oh, well, you know, probably not. That'd be like me showing you how to swing a tennis racket for the first time. And then the next day you say, well, I can do this. I think I'm going to sign up for Wimbledon. No, probably not a good move. You're not ready for that. We need to practice. We need to become more experienced in real love before we can attempt to do it in an exclusive relationship, which is the hardest place that it is to do. That and children. You go on, you continue. I haven't read the Real Love book yet. I'm waiting for it to arrive, but I'm getting the idea that real love is like agape love, like Martin Luther King taught. You know, I'm not even going to make the comparison. You read the book, surf the website, talk to people in the conference calls, have one-on-one calls with people, get a coach maybe, and you'll figure it out, and it will utterly transform your life. So dive in, honey. Here's a viewer who says, I was on holiday for 2 weeks. When somebody says that they're on holiday, that means they're not from the United States. Funny how one word identifies that they're not from here. People in the States they go on vacation, whereas people from Canada and the UK go on holiday. Now I'm back at work teaching, but my experiences of the last few months have been dealing with an utterly controlling boss, and inefficient middle management, and a constantly changing goals. So now I find myself awake in the middle of the night again. Personally, the thing that worries me most is that I realize that when I'm in this kind of situation, the fear of, you know, the leaders and so on doesn't make me work harder, it makes me run. Oh, honey, you are so smart. And yet we spend most of our lives trying to motivate people with fear, or being motivated by fear ourselves. Oh, sure, if I frighten you, I can get you to move. I come at you with a bat. I can get you to move. I probably even get you to move in some specific ways, like out of the chair that you're in. But while I'm swinging a bat at you, are you going to do anything truly constructive? Something meaningful, something that you espouse as a principle that you will believe and that will continue to motivate you in the long run? No. So fear has no good long-term benefits, none. And yet we continue to use it. It's just kind of nutty. It's nutty to motivate people with fear, and it's nutty to ever be motivated by fear. Fear just kills. You continue. So I work slower, with less effectiveness, and I protect myself by saying, I don't care. This is a foolish defense mechanism. I need help. So how do I show real love to those who need it, and how can I overcome my own defense mechanism and be more effective? So first, I believe you. that the people around you are ineffective, incompetent, lazy, foolish, stupid, controlling. You've pretty much used all those descriptions. Yeah, that's, kind of what most people are, actually, on average. This is what they do. All you've really defined is getting behaviors and protecting behaviors, and shoot, we're just riddled with them, aren't we? And it's not like we use them at home, and then when we go to work, well, we, lay them outside the door of our workplace, and then we're loving and effective at work. No. In fact, most workplaces, large businesses, small businesses, I've talked to people who've worked in all manner of environments, most people are ruled by their fear, by their emptiness, and by these behaviors. So, how effective do you think their workplaces are? They're terrible. I know somebody who recently went and did an internship at one of the largest corporations in the United States, and one of those that is ranked among the best to work for. They're the people who say, we care about people first. Our employees are what matter to us most. And so he went to work for this place for the summer. And at the end of the summer, he called me and he said, it's all a lie. It's all a lie. All this business of we care about people, they don't care about people. Everybody's protecting their own butt. Everybody's trying to accumulate power to themselves. Everybody's working for praise. In other words, they're human beings. And we see this everywhere we go. I just saw a poster, no, not a poster, really a billboard in our town. And there was it was the name of a bank. And it said, a bank in town. And it said, other banks see numbers. We see you. I was just all touched inside. So I wanted to take a picture of the billboard and take it down to the bank and say, since you care about me, what I would like is, and then tell them what I wanted. There's no link between what the company claims, usually, and how they actually behave. And that's true in the business that you're in. And you're in the teaching business. So here are people whose entire reason to be is to care about the students. And you're going, but they don't. That's right. So one of the biggest hurdles that you can overcome is to get over your illusion, honey. Everywhere we go, we see people who are empty and afraid. And it doesn't matter what business they're in. It doesn't matter if they're in caring businesses, like medicine and teaching and therapists, for example. You'd think therapists, oh man, it's all about the caring. They're just as empty and afraid as everybody else. Not one bit better, in fact. So all you're seeing is the natural result of a lack of real love in these people. But it frustrates you because they claim to be in the business where they care. Well, welcome to life. So you have the three choices. You don't get the fourth one, which is to change them. So you can live with it and hate it, which is kind of where you are now. Ask yourself, how's that working out? Doesn't seem to be, not if you're out in the middle of the night. You could leave it. You could leave that school that you teach at and go teach at another one. But you shouldn't be terribly surprised to know that even though you will have left all the old people behind, you're going to go to, if you went to another school, you would find that they were almost identical. They would have different names, but they have the same emptiness and fear. And so they're going to end up with doing variations on the same mismanagement and uncaring and controlling and all that stuff, because that's what people do. So what can you do? We have the third choice, which is live with it and like it. And that doesn't mean live with it and like stupid, foolish behavior. That's kind of like silly to even say. Like being controlled, like being... No, that's not what I mean by like it. It means learn to be loving and happy within the constraints of your environment. So, I've worked in volunteer organizations where the people mismanaged things, where they didn't care about people, where the entire purpose, the acknowledged purpose of the volunteer organization was to care about people, and where it was really all about making themselves look good and being powerful and and telling people to stick it. And, you know, there have been times that I've thought, how in the world do these people function? Like everybody else. So I can resent them, or I can accept how they are, love them as well as I can, and not have an expectation that my loving them will change them. I do have an expectation that as I love these people, I will be happier. And you know, that happens. That really works. So, you love your students as well as you can. And when the boss comes in and says, I want you to do this, and like you said, the goals are always changing, then you say, well, I would just be glad to. Now, if you have an opinion contrary to the way that they prescribed, you can sometimes say, okay, I'd be happy to do that. Have you thought about this? And yes, I'm not stupid. Almost every time they will say, we're not interested in your opinion the least little bit. We want you to do it our way. Fully being aware of the fact that a month later they'll come back and change their way, which I understand was the perfect way the first time, so how could it be the perfect way the second time since they changed it? I know. I get the hypocrisy of the whole thing. But that's what people do. When people don't feel loved, they protect themselves. They gather every form of imitation love. It's all internally inconsistent. Seems to make no sense. I get that. That's the nature of imitation love. But just because they invite you onto the field of death doesn't mean you have to go. You can still be loving. You can still accept them. You can still be loving and stamp your own personal style and caring on their way of administering things. You can still make it loving, even if the mechanics of the way that they suggest that you do things is stupid. So your happiness is all in your hands there, honey. No kidding. Here's a viewer who says, I know that we're not responsible for other people's lives or their choices. But what about a situation when we believe that somebody is truly in danger, like suicide, child abuse, spousal abuse? A lady told me the other day that she was on a conference call and she heard a coach say that it's never our business to get involved. And she was having a hard time with that. She heard that clearly. In real love, we don't get involved. This is one of those times when somebody quoted the word of Greg and got everybody confused. When, if ever, is it our business to get involved, and how do we go about it? Well, it really depends. Remember, it's always about real love. So you don't need to memorize little what to say. So I'm going to give you some examples, but just to illustrate the overall principle. It's caring about them. People really get to make their own choices. I don't get to control their choices. So when would I ever interfere? I would interfere with the choices that somebody else makes so close to never that I can count on my hands and feet the number of times that lately I have felt justified in doing that. So let's look at a few. Suicide. I've talked to, tens of thousands of people now. And on the phone, I've had maybe a few dozen, probably more than that actually, mention that they'd thought about suicide. In all these years, never one time has anybody mentioned suicide to me on the phone and then gone and killed themselves. Now, I can't give you this as an absolute rule because there's going to be an exception somewhere. But when somebody really wants to kill himself, he doesn't call you up on the phone and give you a warning. He doesn't. He just kills himself. He might leave a note, but they don't call you up to discuss it. So the thing that I have found most useful is just to ask them about it. When somebody says, I just want to kill myself. Well, actually, sometimes we even say that joking. So you ask them, so how serious are you about that? Well, I've thought about it. All right, if he's thought about it, he isn't that serious. It's not going to happen right after you hang up. And then you say, so have you thought about like how you would kill yourself? No, I just sometimes wish I could just check out. If somebody hasn't even thought about how they're going to kill themselves, they are not, underline, not going to leave the phone call with you and then suddenly work all this out and kill themselves. It's just not going to happen. Now, if you're not sure, if you're going, oh man, I don't have enough experience with this to know, then you might say, you know, if you're really thinking about it, I suggest that you call 911. I had a conversation not long ago with a guy about this who lived clear out in Montana, as I remember. And I said, you know, if you're really thinking about it, call 911. And he said, no, I'm not that serious about it. And I said, well, are you really thinking about it? And he said, yeah, I guess I really am kind of thinking about it. I said, well, then will you let me call 911? And he said, well, I don't know. Well, now, if somebody says, I don't know about you calling 911, then I did. He's saying he wouldn't call 911, but he didn't just flat say, no, don't. So at least there was a question in his mind, so I did call the local suicide hotline where he lived, and they went out and checked on him, and it was no big deal, but I felt better that he wasn't just left, you know, trying to decide whether he was going to kill himself, and that's an example of where I intruded into somebody's life. But I let him know that I was going to do it. Spousal abuse. So let's say that you know that a husband is hitting his wife. Well, gee whiz, she's not 4. She's an adult. Now, it's also understandable that she may not know how to get out of that situation. She may be too terrified to leave. So the person to talk to isn't him. And don't call the police. You have no idea what you're sticking your head into when you say, well, I'm going to stop this abuse. Oh, man, you don't have a clue. Because in many cases, the person who's being abused actually wants to stay. Now, I'm not saying they want to be hit, but I'm saying there's a trade going on. And let's say that it's a guy, because I've known a number of guys who've been objects of spousal abuse. And the guy's going, I'll let you hit me from time to time because there are at least those moments when I feel accepted by you, I feel important to you, I feel invaluable to you. In fact, sometimes even feel invaluable to you as an object you can hit. You really don't know what you're doing if you go and like call the cops, for example, and when somebody's being hit. But it would be worth at least making an attempt to talk to the person who's being abused and say, how's this working for you? Is this something you really want to get out of? Or is this something that you stay in just, you don't know any different way? Learn some more before you go giving people your opinion. Now, if an abused spouse says, I really do want to get out of this. Oh, well, then put them in touch with, you know, one of the many battered spouses shelters, and they can give them lots of advice about how to get out. And we're not going to go into all the things that you could say to somebody, but that gives you a feeling. Child abuse. That's a case where I would talk to the abuser and say, you know, I've seen your kids coming home with bruises, and it concerns me. Now notice, I'm saying, it concerns me. If you say, you got to stop that right now, you're actually likely to precipitate the next abuse. The only reason somebody hits a kid is because they're feeling empty and afraid. And so you go and tell that person that they're a terrible parent, they're going to feel worse about themselves, they're going to hit somebody, and who do you think it's going to be? It's not going to be you, they're going to hit the kid. They're empty and afraid and cowardly, so they hit little kids. Now what if you find out if somebody is sexually abusing a little child? Man, this gets complicated. I was in a group of guys when a guy said, I've been hiding this for years. I've been sexually abusing my daughter. And, you know, if I'd been a licensed therapist, counselor, or his priest, I'd have been obligated to report him to the law. But nobody in that room was a licensed counselor or a priest. We just loved him. We accepted him. We asked him questions about his life, about his relationship with his wife, about his relationship with his parents. The guy was just empty and afraid. And the more we loved him, the more he felt it. And, you know, of course, we kept following up with him, and he quit using his daughter, completely healed his life, became a happy and independent human being, left the wife who was verbally and emotionally abusive to him, eventually became so trusted by the daughter that he'd once sexually abused that he ended up babysitting that girl's little girl. So I'm not saying you should do nothing when you hear about somebody being sexually abused as a child, but I am saying that a knee-jerk reaction of, I'm going to report him to the cops, may end up causing more harm than you can imagine. You take these guys and put them in prison, they're at the bottom rung of a prison. They end up getting abused themselves, they feel worse about themselves, and then they come out feeling even more empty and afraid. What do you think they're going to do when they're empty and afraid? They're going to find another kid. So if you have any doubt about what to do, talk to somebody who's like way more experienced and get their opinion on it. But I can tell you that just a knee-jerk reporting them to the cops is rarely the thing. Here's somebody who, this is working off that last question. We were talking about, we in real love should never get involved, so I hope you're clear that that's not true. But the person who said that said it like it was real love gospel. And people on calls tend to, when they hear a coach say something, or when somebody quotes me, they tend to say a thing as though it were true. And I'm concerned about how much, this is the viewer speaking, how much people really believe everything that a coach says. And is it an accurate portrayal of real love principles? So could you address the idea that wise men are not always wise? And there's no infallibility principle going on here. And that sometimes we may hear something totally different from what was intended because of our own blindness. So, look, I wrote the dang books, and I get it wrong often. If I'm not feeling loving, I'm going to say something that's wrong too. So I would suggest that as somebody's telling you a thing, listen not just to the words that they're saying, but whether they're being loving. If somebody is saying, well, this is the do it, it's very unlikely that when somebody is adamantly insisting that they're right and trying to convince you that they're right, it's very unlikely that they're going to be quoting a real love principle correctly, because real love principles are taught in a loving way. So how do you weed out the trash? You just devote yourself to learning more. You read more, you participate in calls, you talk to people about real love. If you hear something that doesn't make sense to you, doesn't seem loving, check it out. Ask 3 or 4 other people in real love. If you run a principle by 3 or 4 experienced real love people, it's unlikely that you're going to stay misled. Could happen. And if you still wonder, send me a letter, which is how all these video chats happen. Write me at greg@reallove.com, and if there's time, then we'll address the questions. We got to most of the questions that were sent to me for today's chat. Again, it's always about loving people. It's about seeing what do they need, rather than adamantly adhering to a particular guideline or what people think of as rules. Got to keep the rules. No. What's the loving thing to do? So I'm really grateful for all the questions that you sent. They were helpful to me. Every time I answer a question, I learn something. No kidding. Helps me see something from another perspective and another light that I hadn't thought about. So I'm grateful that you do that. Send your questions to greg@reallove.com. Look forward to hearing from you. We'll meet again in a week. I look forward to that on next Tuesday. And between now and then, remember that it's really about real love. See you then.